was eating sweet potato pie. They ain't putting in work and she caught my eye. In the country, so you know your boy had to try. Where they be hunting, fishing, cooking, oh my. So I asked my homie, yo, who she be? He said the drinks cost money, but the honey is free. She don't play no games like a one-night stand. If you get a phone number, you a heck of a man. That girl, holy boy, body writing like a scripture. She cook like a mama, and she dance like a sister. See, I'ma buy a drink and tell her who I am. Say, oh Lord, oh Lord, oh Lord. I'm one of the bad motherfuckers to ever do it. Solo shit. You wanna party with Sam? Hold up, she let me finish my claim. I know this bad for the mucker, every one of the same. Now enough about me, it's time to get to the bag. Now she rolling with this kid, to this day I'm glad that. So I asked my homie, yo, who she be? He said the drinks cost money, but the honey is free.
And good day, everybody. This is your boy Cruz, the Beast from the East, and this is what?
Let's Talk Tuesday.
Let's Talk Tuesday. We're glad to have you here. Is this the first Tuesday of the month? July, or we're in the second? You know, all these Tuesdays starting to run together now. You know, this is the second Tuesday. Okay, I just wanted to test y'all. Okay? I promise you, I'm not gonna have a lot of shenanigans tonight because we're, you know, a serious guest, serious topic. But I had to get that one shot in. Y'all know how that go. All right. Glad to have everybody here with us. Those that are listening to us out on Let's Talk Tuesday Facebook page, also on our Cruise Inc. Radio 102.8 Facebook page, and our YouTube page, which is Cruise Inc. Radio 102.8 TV. So you know how we do. Before we introduce our guests and get settled in, put our seatbelt on, go for a ride, we got to pay some bills because we always got to keep these lights on. And if you're out there in your boat right now in the Richmond area, just go ahead and paddle slow. If you're trying to drive in your car, remember what they said. This is serious. If you see a puddle, turn around. Don't try to drive through there because you're jeopardizing yourself and also the first responders that have to come out there and possibly rescue you. So let's keep everybody safe. Our prayers, again, for those down in Texas and also down in North Carolina. They had more flooding down there as well. So let's keep them in our prayers. All right, everybody. As you know, what I always say, aka every Tuesday, I tell them, if you've been involved in an accident, it's no fault of your own, then you need to call the G Law firm. Why? Because they're relentless, reliable, and they had a great reputation when it comes to settling cases and getting you the fair judgment. This law firm has been around for over 40 years. They're family-oriented, they're community-oriented, and I tell you, these guys do a fantastic job. 804-226-4111. You can go to the website at glawfirm.com. Again, if you go out there and you see that sign that says wet floor and you fall, don't call the G Law Firm, okay? It says no fault on your own. So, yeah, we're glad to have our audience here. Hey, audience, how y'all doing out there? Can I hear some noise?
Hey.
Oh, we gotta go get, wait a minute. Hold on. Audience, can I hear some noise? That's what I like to do. All right, everybody. As I indicated, we have a very, very special guest with us this evening. And I'm going to try to do this off the top of my dome here. We have the gubernatorial candidate who is an independent candidate for the Commonwealth of Virginia. She's running for the governorship, okay? She is a native of New York. She's a former Air Force veteran. She also served in missiles and part of counterintelligence. She's also in counterterrorism. She is the daughter of immigrants that came here, and she went to a Catholic school. She went to school in Pennsylvania, if I'm not mistaken, and also she did a stint with the Department of Defense and also the State Department as well. And she is a declared candidate. And let me say this real quick so you all understand. A declared candidate means that she is not on the ballot. So it's going to be vitally important for you to remember this young lady when you go to the website, check out. But tonight we're going to ask you some questions. We're going to do a deep dive here.
I'm ready.
Welcome to Let's Talk Tuesday.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure, and you are a savant. You just like I did. You a steel trap up there. You have a mind.
I have all kinds of knowledge just rolling
That's
around. I don't know why, but
That's
anyway.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction. Thank
Awesome,
you.
awesome. We're glad to have you here tonight. This has been about a couple of weeks in the making, and so I want to give a shout out to Charles Willis for contacting us. And
Thank you, Charles.
Absolutely, Mr. Community, and
Absolutely.
also got to acknowledge the man himself, Mr. Steven Sykes, in the house. So y'all had a wonderful interview as well, and. Again, who else? You brought some other people in here. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I have Sydney Yaphet here. He is my social media strategist, and
Okay.
he's the one who's helping me not look absolutely crazy on social media, because I'm of that age where I'm still struggling with social media. So I appreciate that. Again, Stephen is here, and also Tracy Carver is here as well. And we had a chance to meet at the Charlottesville. We did. There was a little rally out there for the University of Virginia, and the pressure that President Ryan faced and was ousted at the behest of the administration. So I recently met him last week, and he is interested in supporting our campaign as well. So it's great to have friendly faces around.
Absolutely. Now, part of my research and just getting to know more about you, I was thoroughly impressed because I was a part of the Air Force ROTC in college. Rather than going in as a second lieutenant, I decided to go do some other things. So again, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
That is tremendous.
Thank you.
To be in the field, with the missiles and the counterterrorism and the intelligence. She's nobody to mess with, y'all.
Yes, I can shoot straight. Yes. Whether or not I'll hit a target, that's a story.
Now, being in the missile field, I kind of want to, before we get down into the real nitty-gritty set of politics here, when we started launching the missiles, what was your initial thoughts? Well, let's go back even further than that when Israel started launching their missiles at Iran. As someone that's been in that field, what were some of your initial thoughts?
Well, my initial thoughts were for the innocent people that are caught in the crossfire of that type of activity, because these are two countries that are either officially or unofficially known to have the capability and weaponry to cause mass casualties and devastation. So I'm always thinking about the casualties, the people who end up in the crossfire of that type of activity. But I also realize that we are at a very difficult place from a foreign policy perspective, because you have this very complicated and complex issue in the Middle East.
Of course.
And you have U.S. forces, U.S. personnel also in harm's way. So you're not just talking about the civilians of the respective countries that are affected, but you have service members who are also affected by that. And we have to think back to, circa 2019, 2020, when you had, again, sort of these similar skirmishes. You had Iranian proxies that were firing missiles at U.S. bases, Al-Assad, Tower 22, Jordan, et cetera, in Iraq as well. And you had service members who were experiencing traumatic brain injuries as a result of these impacts. So I'm always thinking about the people that are in the crossfire, the people that are at the pointy end of that type of conflict, which is why it's so important that we elect officials who have a steady hand and a clear perspective on the implications of their decisions.
Now, a lot of people don't realize that, the Commonwealth of Virginia, the Norfolk Naval Base is here, and one of the largest naval bases for the United States. And so it will resonate as a governor to be a part of that strategic talk, because we're sending troops, men and women from our naval base. And also it makes us, what a lot of people don't think about, it makes us a target for other countries with our naval base. So as governor, what would you do to try to curtail, talking to the officials in DC and stressing the importance of whether or not we should even be launching offensive like that?
So one of the things as chief executive officer, if you will, of the Commonwealth, I would have the opportunity to engage very regularly with our congressional delegation, both on the Democrat side as well as the Republican side. And one of the roles that I will have is to impart upon them the importance of, making decisions that are comprehensive in nature, thinking about all of the people in the Commonwealth who are affected by some of these decisions, including our service members, not just at Norfolk and Little Neck and Dam Neck, but also our national security professionals, the enterprise. We have one of the highest concentrations of national security professionals in the country here in Virginia. And so that would be my responsibility, is to ensure that I impart the importance of considering the potential deployment of these individuals, either in a service member capacity, active duty, be it guardsmen and women, or our civilian personnel who have to go out to the front lines to address these issues. But luckily, we have been very fortunate to have, at least, throughout the congressional delegation on the Senate side as well as on the House side, very thoughtful members who have played important roles on the intelligence committees and on foreign relations committees. And so that, I think, would be a very easy conversation, especially because I'd be coming from a world where I've worked in most of the departments and agencies here in Virginia. So it would be a very easy conversation to have with the likes of Senator Warner, Tim Kaine, and so forth.
That's all. No, this is called straight oil from the can. I'm from Tennessee. Most people would say, okay, Ms. Charles, why go straight to the governor? Why not start maybe at the House of Representatives or the state Senate to perhaps build your political trail, for lack of a better word?
Sure. I consider myself to be well qualified to be the chief executive, chief administrator, chief budget officer of the Commonwealth. And in the same way, you have the likes of, Wes Moore and Glenn Youngkin, who had never served in office prior to their governorship. Okay. I think I would also be well positioned to come straight out of the gate, but also with the experience of having worked in the national security enterprise and foreign policy, and have had leadership roles as a military officer. And I've also had leadership roles where I've dealt with multi-million-dollar budgets. Now, it's not, hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion budget or higher at the state level, but I have the leadership expertise, I have the know-how, and I do not fault people for asking the question, because I've gotten that question quite a bit. But I also am very quick to remind people that there are a number of elected officials at the state level, as also at the local level, and also at the national level, who had never served in office before and find themselves.
I can think of one, and we can tell right away that he's never been in office. But I'm not going to call his name on this show.
Exactly. So I think leaders. Yeah.
So, that one that wears 45 and 47 on the side of his hand.
So oftentimes those positions, you don't necessarily always come well equipped with the training and the expertise, but if you have the leadership qualities and the temperament to be a leader, to be considerate, to be deliberate, to be forward-thinking and creative, but also mindful of the fact that you have a very diverse and broad constituency that you have to work to support every day and earn their vote, then I don't see any reason that I wouldn't be any more qualified. I'm just as qualified as the next person to be governor of Virginia.
All right.
Nice. Well, I have a couple of questions. I'm going to flip it a little bit. Community. What have you done in the community, or what are you doing now in the community?
So One of the things that I think is important to consider, especially when it comes to these leadership roles, is exactly what you're saying. What have you done at the community level? One of the things that I'm always quick to remind people of is that I've spent, as you so aptly pointed out, almost a little over 20 years of my professional career in service to the government broadly. So not only was I an active duty military officer where I served in various capacities overseas as well as domestically, but I've also been a civil servant for more than 10 years. And in that capacity, I have had the opportunity to lend my expertise in counterterrorism, sanctions policy, in other foreign policy matters to ensure that not only are Virginians safe, but people around the country are safe at home and abroad.
Mm-hmm.
So while I may not necessarily have the deepest and strongest ties in my immediate community, that has more to do with the fact that I have been pulled into leadership positions and roles that have put me overseas.
Okay.
I've spent hours at a time. I've slept in the White House because of issues that have occurred overseas. And that was really my focus up until very recently, is the work that I've been doing at the federal government level.
Okay.
And so I would say that hopefully that well compensates for the
Yeah.
fact that I haven't been a fixture or a pillar in my immediate community there in Arlington.
Okay. And how long have you been here in Richmond?
Well, I don't live in Richmond. I live in Arlington, but I've been
Okay.
I've been a Virginian for over 20 years. So when I
Okay.
left active duty in 2007, I made Virginia my home. And so I've been here ever since, and I love it. I absolutely love Virginia. Every time I drive to various stops on the campaign trail, I'm always marveling at how beautiful the Commonwealth is. And you're going to have to drag me out of here dead. I'm not going anywhere. Love it.
What is one of the things just off the top of your head, you can just like off the top,
Sure.
that you would like to change like immediately?
Yep. The minimum wage. I want to see everybody being paid a living and dignified wage. And as much as people crow about the increase from $12 to $12.41 an hour, if we all do the math, it is abundantly clear that $12.41 an hour anywhere in Virginia is barely a living wage. And I think that that is fundamental to some of the broader social issues that we're seeing. Ensuring that people don't have to work 2 or 3 jobs, leaving their kids to their own devices if they have kids, being able to support themselves, save for a rainy day, save to buy a home. Restoring the dignity of work means that you have to look at labor as a productive prong in our society, meaning that people should be paid a living wage to afford them the dignity and respect they deserve. So that to me is fundamental too. That's one of the first things off the top that I would work to do in coordination with the General Assembly.
So what would you say to the small businesses that said, okay, if this minimum wage go up, I'm not going to be informed these employees in my place of business?
So that's where I think at the state and local level, we have a responsibility to look at the important role that small businesses play in our community, that they have in our community. And I don't see any reason that we should not create a structure, an incentive structure that ensures that these small businesses that are providing essential services across the board to our communities don't look at their tax time as another penalty. So we can create a process whereby small businesses are essentially not rewarded per se, but are given a little bit of breathing room because we are ensuring that people are paid a living wage. And by the way, I wouldn't say wholesale, but I do reject the idea that paying people a living wage draws from your profits. And the reason I say that is because when there's more money flowing in that local community, it is very likely that you have more people who are contributing to your business, first of all. Secondly, more often than not, small business owners are saddled with the costs of running a business, the overhead, the health insurance, other benefits. So we need to look at some of those elements more creatively to help alleviate some of the burdens of running a business. But I don't believe across the board that raising the minimum wage to a living wage well above $12 an hour is going to be the death knell to small business, especially if we're thinking creatively about how we ensure everything from tax day to some of the benefits packages are more reasonable and attainable for small businesses.
Awesome.
Did I pass that one?
I ran for school board in 2024, so education is highly important to me, and I have a lot of followers. And hey, Tisha, have all you guys. Tisha is a very active parent in terms of making sure that her kids get a quality education. And I call her Hammer. Her name is Keisha, and she is one of the administrators in one of our schools. In terms of education, we have been lagging behind in terms of some of our SOLs and strategic subjects things, and also now that there have been some cuts from the federal government. As governor, how do you help to bring us up to where our schools are accredited, and then two, how do we create income for our schools that will supplement the cuts that we have from federal government?
That's a really good point that you raised, because, and we were talking about this before in a previous engagement, that the One Big Beautiful Bill, some of the negative repercussions will be cuts to not just public school education, but some after school programs and other curricular activities. And so we need to think creatively as well about how we ensure that we're not only retaining our professional teaching pool, but we're also ensuring that we're bringing people into that pool as well. I have, from my personal perspective, I'm the product of private school education, and my parents, as you mentioned, immigrants that came here. I come from very modest means. These are not people who were wealthy by any means. They didn't have voucher programs to send my sisters and I to Catholic school. But that's exactly what they did, because they wanted to ensure we had the best education. And I realized that the school choice issue is a very touchy one here, but we have to think about why it's so critical for the state and locals to come together to ensure that our curricula is structured in a way that's meeting the demands of current and future employment, current and future professions, making sure that our students are ready for the challenges and the opportunities that the future brings. I think we have an opportunity to look at some of these major cuts coming from the federal workforce. We have a lot of people with expertise coming out of the federal workforce, engineers, people who are doctors, lawyers, so forth, who can help contribute to a discussion about what curriculum should look like across the board here in Virginia to ensure that our students are ready. And in some of the rural areas, the places that tend to have challenges when it comes to resources, I think that we have to consider how school choice is done in a smart way. That's why on my website, you'll see smart school choice. Smart school choice, in my mind, is where you allow parents to have the agency and the autonomy to determine where they send their children to school.
Okay.
But we then think about, okay, those students, and therefore those taxpayer dollars, those Virginia taxpayer dollars, are following those students, thereby depriving public schools of those resources. But if you consider that those private schools are not only benefiting from those taxpayer dollars, they are essentially going to be subject to the laws of the Commonwealth, right? So they cannot discriminate the way that you would consider might be an opportunity for them. They can't discriminate, but they also would have to be part of that revenue sharing process so that public schools are not deprived, right? So you have a bit of a feedback loop, right? So these private institutions are taxed in a way that ensures that public schools that children who have special needs and others need to go to. So the resources are not completely deprived. The schools are not completely deprived of those resources. So I'm thinking of this in a smart way. When I say smart school choice, I'm thinking of a smart way to ensure that parents have autonomy and choice, but those private schools are not let off the hook completely.
Okay.
Those private schools are contributing to the broader pool of revenue that needs to go back, because we, just like every other state, we're using property taxes to pay for these schools. And in the future, that's going to be increasingly difficult, again, because of One Big Beautiful Bill, right? Because of the handcuffs that are placed on state and local governments. So we need to think about how these private institutions need to also contribute as well and pay back.
Because that's always a misnomer and bone of contention that private schools do siphon off of monies from the public schools, and that resources would dry up if you basically allow more charter schools. So I think again that requires more additional deep dive into that conversation, and looking at it not so much in a subjective manner, but in an objective manner, and really lay it out to what you just indicated there, getting down to the brass tacks of saying, okay, this is what traditionally charter schools may have looked like, but this is what it would look like in the Commonwealth.
Absolutely. Because again, and you raise a really good point, because a lot of these schools, charter schools, Catholic schools, whatever the case may be, sometimes they'll have entrance exams where they use that as the objective measure as to whether or not a child goes to that school. But there are also schools that sometimes will determine whether or not a child is the whole package, just kind of like a college would. If you are taking state funds, right, in terms of the school choice, the smart school choice program, then you have to ensure that you are abiding by the laws, rules, and regulations that govern other schools in Virginia, including public schools. If you are taking taxpayer funds, then you have to subject yourself to the laws of the Commonwealth, just like every other school does, right? End of story.
Absolutely. I think
Devil's in the details, but yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
What I want to say, what rules, regulations, or program that you would implement for special education teachers and kids? Because I'm a special education teacher, and I feel like our hands are tied because they're telling us don't touch the kids or this, and a lot of those kids are pressure-seeking kids. And if they're, get dysregulated, because one did in my class, I got a concussion from it, and it's like, the teachers are not protected. You can't say anything to the parents to try to guard, to lead them in a direction. So I'm feeling that some education and material and resources needs to be given to these parents. And I feel like a lot of administrations in the school are not doing it, because for me personally, the school I was working in, I just felt like they just wanted them kids there, that they're getting a stipend or something from the government.
But they don't have the adequate resources to ensure that they are.
No, and see, they didn't ever teach those kids in the class that we had, me and these other two teachers. Those kids were not communicating. So we taught them sign language. They learned sign language this year. They learned how to use their devices. They could tell to us, but the principals never came down there to check on that class. When we called for help, no one showed up. So it's like, I feel like the special ed program is just put on an island, and you have no support system.
So not to answer your question with a question, what, in your experience, did you feel as if having not just a resource officer, but others who are certified, who are professionals who have dealt with this issue on a medical or a biological level or a psychological level, would that be helpful? What would you consider to be helpful to have as additional professional resources in the facility to address some of the gaps you're talking about?
For me, I felt that would have been helpful if, with the ones who were in charge of the special education program, if when we reached out for them, would they come to the room? You see what I'm saying? To help us. By the time, we never really called on them rarely, but by the time they arrived in the classroom, we calm down the situation and getting the kids under control. I mean, you got kids in that classroom that were running, jumping on tables. One little girl jumped off the table, gashed her eye. We have kids that's punching and biting you because they get dysregulated. You don't know what's triggering them. And it's like,
So how many children on average would you say would be in one classroom?
we had 8 kids from kindergarten to third
Okay.
grade.
So it sounds to me like it would be useful to have either requirement or some form of a regulation in place where in order to have X amount of children
Mhm.
in a room, there has to be X amount of when I'm not just talking about adult
Right.
supervision, I'm talking about professional
Absolutely.
certified adult supervision to maintain your broader certification to run that facility.
And see, that's the problem.
Is there
I'm not certified in it. You
Mhm.
put me in this position. We all were learning, and we became, that's 3 teachers, we became our own support system.
So it sounds like there would be a benefit to having a certification program
Right.
that, again, as a function of you having that position, you are fully compensated to go through that certification program. So not only are you in that field as a function of your position, but you're also gaining that professional certification that comes through that, and you're credentialed
Right.
to do that type of work. Do you think that that would be a useful
I
way
think
to
it
address
would,
that
and I
partially?
also think that if the school systems, you have these special education kids coming to school, there needs to be some resources for these parents, because a lot of these
Mhm.
parents, they came in the classroom, they were distraught. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know who to turn to. And by the school, whatever the school laws told us, we couldn't give them any suggestions because the school said that's not our place. But my thing is, if we have a suggestion that we feel that will help them, because like I said, those kids are learning how to communicate. The sad thing is, none of us teachers are going back to that school.
Mm.
So we don't know what we taught them while they're home for the summer. Are they going to keep learning it? The parents were upset that we're leaving them because now their moms and dads, these kids 8, 9 years old, they can finally talk to their kids.
Mhm.
Their kids are sign language. They're, using words on their talkers
Mhm.
and communicating with their moms and dads. And they said they have never talked to their kids.
So it sounds to me like a lot of these parents are not getting the professional resources and support outside of that
Mhm.
school system. So there might be some value in looking at ways to attach that resource center to that facility so that parents have somewhere to go to other than those who are providing the services in the classroom level, that there's a resource center or some resource attached to that facility whereby parents can have access to education
Mhm.
materials and other opportunities to ask questions and raise concerns about, some of the issues that you're confronting on a regular basis.
Right.
So that could be an opportunity, something that, again, I'd want to dive into the details and look at how something like that would be resourced, because that sounds like it could be expensive. But when you think about what ends up happening on the tail end if you don't provide those services, I think that it would probably be money well spent.
Yeah.
So that is something that I'd love to work with some professionals who have some expertise or long in the teeth on some of the special education needs, especially with children who are on the spectrum.
Right. And it would just be nice too that if it would be a way that the teachers, like we love those kids, if we could would be their advocates as well. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like I had lunch with them today and we were discussing, it's like we just wonder, what this
Mhm.
year is going to bring, because we're not going to be there to see them.
Yeah.
Because we brought them a long way. We got them potty trained, everything. It was a shock to me when I got put in that classroom
Mhm.
and I'm like, these kids are 8, 9 years old. I got to change a pamper.
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
And we're going
my
to be dealing with
gosh.
these issues for years to come, given some of the cuts again,
Yeah,
thanks to the One Big Beautiful Bill. So this is something
That
that I
would be
think,
good.
state and locals will have to work on. But I see an opportunity to look at providing those resources directly to the education centers and facilities attached to it, and making sure that children that are matriculating through these programs, that their parents have access to services through them as well.
Well, the questions get even a little harder from here, okay?
Okay, I can do
We're
it.
just across the street from the VA hospital,
Mhm.
and of course, this question is, as governor,
Mhm.
in terms of the number of veterans that we have that are homeless here in the city and across the Commonwealth. As a veteran, what are some of the things that you and your administration would do to try to curtail or decrease the homelessness and also deal with the mental illnesses and PSTD that
Mhm.
many of the veterans face and leveling up the service at the VA hospitals?
Absolutely. Well, again, a question near dear to my heart as a veteran, but also, again, another unfortunate effect of not just one big beautiful bill, but some of the cuts that we're seeing flowing from the VA, right? They're cutting tens of thousands of positions, which will add further strain to an already strained system. As a veteran, I do believe that is absolutely unconscionable. It is unacceptable, the position that we have allowed our veterans to wallow in, especially those who come from overseas with, again, traumatic brain injury, other forms of PTSD, other forms of mental health challenges. And it is not just our responsibility, it's our duty to help all of these folks. The homelessness issue, I believe, would be readily solved by looking at the commercial and residential stocks that are already available throughout the state. Meaning, if you drive through almost any community, you will find facilities and structures that can be rehabilitated. We can have the zoning conversation with local officials,
Right.
but there's no reason that we shouldn't look at stocks that are available. We don't necessarily have to build anything from the ground up. We can rehabilitate structures that are dotted throughout the state to create housing opportunities for our veterans. There's no reason that any veteran should be unhoused. Absolutely no reason. And so that's where I think it's going to be important for us to consider public-private partnerships and how we incentivize the private sector to look at some of these properties as an opportunity to house our heroes. So that's one area. When it comes to mental health, again, looking at some of the cuts that are coming down the pike from one big beautiful bill, we need to consider the role that our rural hospitals, our urban hospitals, our suburban hospitals are oftentimes playing in addressing mental health challenges. We were talking about this before. Virginia tends to lag behind other states in the region when it comes to providing services for people who are facing mental health crisis. And that includes having beds available. And in other states, I've had people in my life who have faced mental health crises that I've had to seek assistance for them outside of the state of Virginia, outside of the Commonwealth, because there were not enough beds or facilities to address that issue. So that would be a top priority for me, is to work with healthcare providers to ensure that they are incentivized, they are properly resourced to address this challenge. Because as I had mentioned before, if you don't deal with this issue on the front end, you're going to deal with it on the back end. If you don't pay for it in the front end, law enforcement and other authorities in the community will have to address it on the back end. And oftentimes you'll find that not only do you have to pay for it from a financial perspective, but sometimes, people pose a risk to their own lives or to the lives of other people. So why not address it on the front end to ensure that everybody is safe and you provide people an opportunity to live productive and healthy lives, especially those who are closest to those who are facing those challenges. So that's where I say I think that we can do better and we should do better.
And this question is from my South Side people, because they canvassing, the 8th district here and getting to know, and then having the, a lot of the relationships as being a chaplain and doing a number of things out here. Economic development in South Richmond. Most of the businesses, they go to Henrico, Chesterfield, across the water, Scottsdale, but Southside is often neglected. So how would you see you and your administration collaborating with the mayor and city council to bring economic development to Southside? Because again, the median income in Southside is about $25,000, and we have a population of somewhere about 36,000, and of that 36,000, I would venture to say we're talking about 42% Hispanic.
Mhm.
So how do we bring some prosperity to this side, because we're in a food desert, and I've talked to many of the vendors that would consider bringing, a big box store, but it's in the medium income is not enough in Southside
Mhm.
to warrant a store
Mhm.
like a Kroger or a Walmart. How do we change that narrative?
Well, it's important to consider that the barriers to entry for small and medium business owners oftentimes is access to capital. And there are ways that we can improve access to capital, especially those who are already in the community, who are eager to be part of that process, who are eager to open a business, but just need a little bit of a boost, need a little bit of a push. We were down in Newport News a couple of maybe a week or two ago. Everything's blurring, but we were there for a ribbon cutting ceremony for a market that was a kind of in New York we call them bodegas, but it's kind of like a corner market type of situation where there was a food desert, and this young woman had a great idea to create a hot and cold food sort of bodega market in this area that did not have a grocery store for miles.
Mm-hmm.
And she talked to me about some of the struggles she had with obtaining the capital necessary to finance it. She scraped, she scrounged, and she worked with as many institutions as she could possibly find. But she found constant barriers to entry. So I do believe that the state as well as local government can work together in coordination with private enterprise to look at grants and other loan programs that help bring people from within the community to build those businesses. And then as those businesses are built and they flourish, then those big box stores oftentimes will follow that, right? Because usually that's the trail. That's the process or the sequence. It's those small businesses that bring community members together, that help lift all boats, and then you see these larger big box stores come in. But also keep in mind that sometimes these big box stores squeeze out small and medium enterprise.
Yeah.
So there has to be that balance. But I see an opportunity to look at grant programs that are funded in coordination with private partners to help small business owners in the community build those businesses and create and provide those services to people in the community, especially when it comes to food deserts. One last thing on that point, I think my role as governor is to understand where those food deserts are and to engage our local officials as well as community leaders to understand what the needs are in that community and how state government can be, how Richmond can be productive in incentivizing business in that regard. So that's something that I would want to look at very carefully, but I'd also want to work with community leaders to address, not unilaterally. I wouldn't want to impose my decisions or my beliefs on any community.
Okay. It's another hard-hitting one.
Uh-oh.
I have a few. The previous governor before our current governor did restore a lot of rights to convicted felons, and the current governor has basically, he slowed down to a molasses crawl here. Some of you country folk know about the molasses crawl in a few minutes, so we don't Google it. But I had to get a little bit of shenanigans in because I don't want our audience falling asleep on now.
Molasses crawl. I'm going to use that.
Yeah, molasses crawl. You can use that.
I'm going to use it.
Yeah. What about the restoration process of restoring rights to nonviolent felons, and even probably having nonviolent felons who have the capability to do other things in your administration?
Yes, absolutely. So I've had this issue brought up in the time that I've been on the campaign trail, and I've had a chance to talk to individuals while I'm canvassing in areas like Newport News and Charlottesville and Richmond and in parts of Bristol and Blacksburg, where this has come up time and time again. Like, I've had my rights restored under one governor, and then, I'm in limbo under another. And it's fundamentally unfair to put people in a situation where from one day to the next, one term to the next, they don't know where they stand in society. It's especially when they've done their time. And there's no reason that we shouldn't look to a process, again, with the General Assembly to codify this so that it's no longer at the whim of the next governor to determine whether or not somebody has their rights restored. We are one of 3 states in the union that has some of the strictest and in some cases arbitrary rules for restorative rights. And that is a problem and something that I would seek to address right away, because I do believe that it does funnel into an economic issue, right? When you have people who are persistently on the margins, who are not given the opportunity to come back into society after they've served their time and had their rights and should have their rights restored, you increase the recidivism rate, right? The likelihood that they'll turn back to a life that they didn't necessarily want to be in, maybe after doing their time. So we have to consider the opportunities we have to help stabilize people, and doing that through law and policy and mandate. I also believe that there is an opportunity to bring people in who have not just expertise in certain areas, but also the connectivity and community, because we're going to see a lot of the social services fall away as a function of the cuts coming from one big beautiful bill. So why not have people who are members of the community, who've been coming out of a life where they have gone through the system and they've navigated themselves back to a life of stability, helping those that are coming through that pipeline as well, helping people navigate some of the social services and requirements after coming out, spending time 5, 10, 15 years. People have to get their life back in order. And I have seen a number of situations where people come out of doing time, especially for those who serving for nonviolent offenses, and don't have access to a driver's license or forms of identification, and that creates a slippery slope. Also navigating them to housing and ensuring that we at the state level as well as the local level do not penalize people who have done their time and cannot find housing, and ensuring that there is a process whereby if there are complaints, if there are legitimate grievances where people are being denied housing because of their status, that they have recourse, they have remedy, they have somewhere to go at the local or state level to address that discriminatory behavior. And so those are the types of policies that I would be looking at, not just in terms of codifying your rights being restored. I mean, other states like Kentucky have problematic issues with that too, but ensuring that there is an entire process that allows you to stabilize from getting your photo identification, your housing, and ensuring that you are not discriminated against when it comes to certain jobs. And also looking at opportunities for us to bring that talent in at the local and state level too, especially in areas like corrections and education and things like that.
All right. Any questions? If we got about 10 more minutes here, maybe probably 8. Of course.
You asked me a lot of hard questions. So thank you for that. I really enjoyed it. You're good at that.
Here's one. How do you close the gap financially and notoriety when it comes to your opponents? Because again, we know that they have big pockets.
Oh yeah.
They have, a lot of lobbyists and PACs that are working for them. Tonight, tell the people how you're going to close that gap.
Yes.
What makes you much different? Because this is an historic race.
Absolutely. All women.
Yeah, absolutely. So being involved in this race and again, closing that gap, how do you do that?
Well, it's definitely no easy task, because I have committed to focusing on small dollar donors, individual donors, rather than taking money from corporations. So it's one of the reasons that I'm not driving around in a Taylor Swift tour bus all over Virginia. I'm driving my little Volvo around to meet people, to meet constituents. So I don't have that kind of money. But to close that gap, I have to start with earning every vote.
Okay.
I have to establish the credibility with each and every voter who looks at me and says, this person is a viable contender. This person speaks to the issues I care about. This person is going to represent me in a way that makes me feel as if, I'm not second to corporate interests, right? And that is where I earn not just the vote, but the support coming from each voter. So I ask you to take a look at donnaforva.com. You can also Google Donna Charles and Virginia, and you'll find my website. And if you can contribute $3, $5 to my campaign, it goes a long way. Everything from literature to hosting fundraisers and events where I can meet people in person. My goal is to get to every corner of the Commonwealth, to meet you and talk to you one-on-one. That's what I really enjoy doing. And that's where I get a lot of my energy and my drive and my ideas for a policy platform. So how I close the gap is earning every vote, getting out there and making sure people know that I am not just viable, but I am working on behalf of people, everyday Virginians, and not corporations and dark money interests.
Mr. Johnson has a question. It says we need to fix the right policy, especially for nonviolent persons. And, policy, again, is going to be probably a redundant a theme on the campaign trail, and addressing, again, because you did that partially before, what would you say to Mr. Johnson there in terms of righting some wrongs in the policy?
Absolutely. So you raise a really good point about looking specifically at nonviolent offenders, those who have done their time. The rights need to be restored, and it needs to be consistent to ensure that you are not being what I call buffeted or thrown all over the place from one term to the next. But when it comes to the right policies, we also have to look at what I call enforcement mechanisms. So to ensure that we're not just putting in those policies and then you're left to your own devices, that if you identify an area where you are being discriminated against or that you're being shut out of opportunities, primarily because of a status that has been, again, your rights have been restored and you've done your time, you have to have recourse. You have to have remedy. You have to have somewhere to go to say, listen, this is what's happening. Here's the evidence that I have. And this is the individual that's involved in it, or the entities involved in it. And your state and local officials are the ones that are supposed to stand in the gap, stand in the breach for you as somebody who has done their time. You're a tax-paying citizen. So you should have an opportunity to raise those issues and have them adjudicated so that you're not left on the margins. You're not falling through the cracks. And so I hear you loud and clear. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity for someone like a governor to speak to those issues, because I don't really hear the other candidates actually talking about this issue quite as much. But it's not just about restoring rights and then walking away. It's ensuring that there's an entire pipeline that helps protect people who are oftentimes falling through the gaps because people just do whatever they want to. The same thing with housing. I mean, this to me is also very tightly connected to the housing issue. Because there are a lot of landlords out there that realize that they don't have to follow the rules because nobody's watching over their shoulder, right? Is that fair?
No.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And housing is one of the major reasons that people fall from stability to instability.
Correct.
Okay. So again, and also coming from New York, I realized that there are opportunities that we have to look at some of the policies that are in place there. Some may argue whether or not they work, but in terms of stabilizing certain types of housing for people who find themselves in a situation where they're transitioning, right? So those are some of the policies that I'd be looking at, but also the enforcement mechanisms that I'd be looking at as well.
Absolutely.
I hope that answered your question, Samuel.
All right.
I see you. I see your picture.
Donna, 4 months, the election is in November.
Yes,
This is,
November 4th.
Yeah, and this is July.
Mhm.
So I'm going to use a football analogy.
Oh,
here.
let's do it. I was a
Not a
cheerleader.
softball, but
I was a cheerleader, so I.
okay. All right. We got to score. We got to score fast in the fourth quarter. Do you continue to throw the ball down the field, or do you methodically try to score and score quickly?
In my case, I know I have to score and score quickly. But I also think that a both and approach is probably the best answer. And the reason I say that is because in the time that I have been actively campaigning, I filed my paperwork in January, but I was, in the government sector up until May.
Okay.
So in the time that I've been actively campaigning, I have been somewhat surprised at how many people that I've engaged, again, working to earn their vote, who not only don't know that there is an election this year, but those who do know don't know who the major candidates are. And those who do have an inkling of who the major candidates are don't really know where they stand on the issues. And I suspect that has a lot to do with this general desire to see this race in particular focus on what we call the high propensity voters, people who are out there voting in every election, dog catcher, city council, etc. Right. My goal in this race is not only to ensure that people know who I am and what I stand for and the work that I would do as governor, but to ensure that people are broadly aware and educated on the issues and the fact that they have a voice and need to go to the polls, whomever they decide to vote for. So my goal is to earn every vote, get out there, throw the ball as many times as I possibly can, score as much as I possibly can, meet every voter as much as possible where they are. So getting out to every corner and raising as much money as possible. So I appreciate all the support.
All right, we'll take this last question here, and then we're gonna. I have one more hard question.
Yes, absolutely.
And we're gonna wrap it up.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Sykes has a question. What about expungements for nonviolence? The way that they can see it in the record, which hurts on housing, jobs, etc. This is true. A lot of times, employees and employers, they do criminal background checks, and the expungement doesn't always show up. So, and you mentioned that the Commonwealth is always lagging behind. How can we be the trailblazer to change, again, that narrative?
Sure. I believe that if you offer the opportunity, if you offer someone the pathway to have their rights restored, it only makes sense that their rights are not only restored, but that their record is primarily for those who were convicted of nonviolent offenses, and those types of offenses that did not involve children, and another area close to my heart, the elderly, because that is a no-go for me as well. But if we can provide that rights restoration, we can also provide a pathway to full expungement. And that goes back to the discussion we had about providing that enforcement mechanism and ensuring that if you are going to expunge somebody's record, that there is an avenue or pathway that if it's determined that somebody somehow obtained information about you, is using that against you, that you have an avenue for recourse and remedy, and that there are some civil penalties that are imposed as a result of that. So I think that there is a way to do that. I don't think you just restore someone's rights willy-nilly and then leave them flapping in the wind. There has to be a way in which they are protected and they are covered so that they can access jobs and housing and reduce the rate of recidivism, as we call it, and ensure that they create that stability for their lives and for their families' lives.
Okay, you got any questions coming in on?
No, I was just looking at a few people waiting.
Okay, they're waiting. We're waiting. All right. Again, as we get ready to close out here, the youth. Okay, how do you engage young men, young women that pretty much have a disdain for politics, has a disdain for the current leadership, and get our youth involved? So sell them on why they should be, put in their wag, and another old phrase, hitching their wagon to yours.
Absolutely. Well, first, it's about credibility and ensuring that you're looking at somebody who has walked a path in life that you understand and resonates with you, right? But if you don't get involved in the political process, it's that saying where that if you are not at the table, you are on the menu, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to consider that you have power as a voter, as a citizen, as a resident of the state, to engage in a process that's directly affecting your life. You're probably hearing a lot about one big beautiful bill and all of the cuts and all of the devastation that'll wreak on us. If you ever confront a challenge with getting a job, if you ever confront a challenge with getting your benefits, if you ever confront a challenge in, accessing the education or even the healthcare that you need, think about the role that the state or your local entities play in that, and then determine who's in charge, why are they in charge, and what can I do to ensure that they're not in charge if you want somebody different. You have the power to do that. And there's a reason that the process of engagement is oftentimes not well advertised in our communities, right? There's this understanding or this idea that we're just going to vote a certain way just because, right?
Yeah.
That we're just going to vote a certain way just because. And that breeds an apathy, and it breeds these gaps that when you look around, you're like, well, wait a minute, what's going on? Who's supposed to be doing this? And it's incumbent upon each of us as citizens to understand that we have the power every year. And Virginia is one of the few states we have elections every year for something.
Yes.
So it's incumbent upon us to understand who is in charge of what, why they're doing these things. When you look around your community, why do things look the way they do? And what can you do to change it? You have the power to do that.
And let everybody know where they can find you at, on social
That's
media
right.
and your website. And
Yes.
So I know there are probably going to be more questions
Yes.
That we can ask tonight that citizens are going to want to ask you.
Thank you for that. So you can find me on Donna4VA.com, FORVA, Donna4VA.com. You can send questions to me there. I have a contact section, a volunteer section. You can also donate there as well. I'm also on TikTok, Donna for Gov. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. If you just look up Donna Charles, I'm pretty much the only one there that's running for office, so you'll find me. I'm also on Blue Sky. I'm on X. I don't know how much that's doing for me, X, at this point, but I'm on pretty much all the social media. And I would love to also see some of y'all in person. So I'll be back in Richmond on Saturday at 10 a.m. at the Legacy Theater. If you sign up on Eventbrite, it is free. But you can come there and pepper me with questions on a Saturday morning if you're feeling punchy. Come on out, because I'd love to answer your questions in person and meet you in person and shake your hand and earn your vote in person as well. So I look forward to seeing you all. If you can come out again this Saturday, 10 a.m. at the Legacy Theater here in Richmond. I'll be here for a listening session, and I look forward to it.
Also, National Night Out. She'll be
Yes.
back here in Southside.
August.
At the Sunlight, August the 5th, so she'll be here, and then she will also be in Bella Vista.
Yes. Yes.
That, and before that, she's going to be in DC for the event there.
Yes, absolutely.
Did I capture them all?
I think you did, and we're still adding events to the website. So please go to my website again, Donna4VA.com, to stay abreast of some of the events that I'm engaging in. But yes, National Night Out, I'm so excited for that. That's going to be a great lineup. And I'll be speaking at the Buena Vista annual Labor Day Parade and Festival. I'll be marching in that festival as well. So I'm looking forward to that. But I do appreciate being on this platform, y'all platforming me, because one of the things I wanted to add is that it is non-traditional independent media that is fueling awareness about
girl, you got my
campaign.
vote already. You mentioned
Cruise Incorporated, Cruise Inc. But independent media is really what is fueling awareness about me. So I do appreciate the opportunity to be on your program. Thank you.
Miss AK, you want to close us out tonight?
This has been great. Thank you.
Thank
for
you. Thank you
hanging
for
out
having
with
me.
us on Let's Talk Tuesday.
Yeah.
So y'all, she's here. She's gonna be back. So.
Donna Charles.
Yeah.
Write it
DC,
in. Donna
DC.
Charles. 2 first names. DC. That's right. Nice and easy.
I'll send the check, We'll get that passed,
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you all. I hope to see you all on Saturday too.
All right,
Join on
everybody.
the platform and actually donate.
Please.
Yeah.
$3. That's all I'm asking for. $3.
All right, everybody. Again, we certainly appreciate you being here. We try to bring you information that's going to help you determine what you need to do in these elections and be as informative as possible. And Ms. Charles, thank you again for being here. We certainly appreciate it. For those of you that were perhaps late turning in for whatever reason, again, you can go to our Let's Talk Tuesday page, our Cruising Radio 102.8 page, also our Facebook page, which is Cruising Radio 102.8 TV. And I'm going to throw in a bonus here. We got a page out there called Richmond VA Things to Do. It is 100,000 Richmonds that's on that page. And once we end tonight, I'm going to post that on that page. Also, we're going to post it on our Cruising Virginia page and also our Cruising Media page. So we're going to give you the shotgun approach
Thank you.
and put this out here because I think that people need to be informed. You all have seen the other candidates, heard from the other candidates. In order to make wise decisions, do your research, investigate, and more than anything, go out and vote because every vote counts. All right, everybody. So have a great night, and we'll see you soon. As I always say, whatever comes from the heart reaches hard. Let somebody know how much you care about them before it's everlasting too late.
The first thing that you need to do is to make sure you get yourself to as safe place as you can. Find yourself a competent attorney who practices in personal injury and will understand some of the things that you're going through. And as I tell people, for 33 years I've been doing this. I've had my own accident. So I would like to be one of those individuals that they would interview so I could at least try to find out how I can best help them myself.